This is impossible. Can't we just hire them both?
No, we've been through this. We've only got the budget for one presenter.
Yeah, but they're both so great. I can't decide between them.
Well, that's our job. That's what Buckingham pays us for.
I know, but these guys have been through hell. A 5-hour audition? 3 callbacks?
Well, look, if you want to give up your salary so Buckingham can hire both these guys, that's fine with me.
Okay.
Amanda, bring him in.
This is the part of the job that I hate. Sal, Jake, listen, before we start, I just want to say once again that either one of you would make a fine addition to the Buckingham family. I know you've been put through a long audition, and it's been hard, but I think that in itself is a testament to how good both of you are and just how difficult our choice is. I wish I could just flip a coin and be done with it, but we can't. We're Buckingham.
All right. Well, I'm going to kick off, top presenter competition here with Reg SID and see if I can prove my worth in getting hired. So Reg SID, as Kenta had previously talked about, is a new rule sort of back in 2013, and it was a rule designed to identify and prevent and mitigate identity theft. And when we talk about red flags in this context, we're talking about something that is like a pattern, practice, or an activity that indicates there's a possible existence of identity theft. And we have policies and procedures designed to prevent that, detect it, prevent it, and hopefully mitigate it. And part of those policies and procedures, it's essential to ensure that everyone has an awareness of red flags, of which commonly kind of occur at 3 most likely points, right? Account opening, money movements, and third-party sources. And within there falls into commonly a couple of different categories. Think of suspicious documents or suspicious personal information or suspicious account activity, and then gets into things like notifications. And that notification could be directly from a client or from another source like our custodian partners. So essentially, it's really important for everybody to be aware of this big issue and have an awareness of escalating and reporting those identity theft potential occurrences, and in addition, allowing others to move into place to help prevent any frauds as a result of that identity theft. And just to note, we do have a number of resources available related to sort of helping with the end clients with the prevention of identity theft. So boom, Jake.
That was pretty good, Sal. I'm going to do my best to kind of one up you here. And what better topic to try to do that with than custody? It's a perennial hot topic on the SEC risk alert and risk priority list. When we think about custody, if this is a new training to you or a concept that is new, the easiest way to think about it is actual possession of client funds or securities. And that can come in a number of different examples, which we have on the screen here, right? Being a trustee for a client, taking possession of a client usernames or passwords, some type of check writing authority, or processing a stock certificate, right? All cases where, as an advisor or an associate at Buckingham, you have direct or indirect, right? Sometimes indirect access to those funds or securities. Obviously, a high risk here for firms that do have custody because of the authority, right? And the power that gives an advisor or an associate to take action independent of any client authorization within that account based on these types of roles. So how do we think about mitigating this type of custody risk, right? A big part of this risk presentation is not only addressing the risk, but figuring out how we can solve for it. First is reporting, right? We want to make sure we're aware of any and all custody situations so that we can, 1, report it and add it to our custody log, or 2, right, mitigate it disclose it, and eliminate that conflict, as Sal addressed earlier when we think about conflict of interest. The next two kind of go together, policy and procedures and testing. We've got robust policy and procedures for compliance, making sure that we have the correct controls in place to monitor for custody risk. But we also test this, right? I mentioned looking for ways that we're not taking possession of client securities and preventing that type of inadvertent custody in certain cases. The last one I'll touch on is training, right? This will always be a hot topic. We want to make sure we always address it during these annual trainings or one-off trainings, whether that's with advisors or with the client service team, those frontline associates who are more often than not going to be presented with this type of custody risk. So that was my first dance, Sal, my first act here. I think I channeled my best Swayze, and I'll say Ghost, one of my favorite Swayze films. So I'll kick it over to you next for some money laundering.
Well, nothing to come over the top than a Chris Farley sort of presentation, and going back to tried and true classic kind of stuff. And by a classic, I mean money laundering, right? Can't have a compliance meeting without a good discussion on anti-money laundering. So when we think about money laundering, we think about sort of transactions used to take sort of proceeds from illicit or illegal activities and take those funds and run them through the financial system and make it appear as though they came from a legitimate or legal source. And there's always generally three kind of stages of money laundering: the placement, the layering, and the integration. And essentially, right, you're bringing in the introduction of illegally obtained currency into the banking system. You're then using that banking system to illegally hide currency, and then reintegrating it and make it look like it came from legitimate sources. So for us, money laundering is usually we're on the periphery of sort of this issue of money laundering, but we are in a unique position. And we're in a unique position because we have very intimate knowledge of our clients. We have intimate knowledge of the source of the funds. And so that's why we actually are in a unique position to help prevent any sort of money laundering. And the core foundation of our actual money laundering program is knowing your client, of course, but then secondly is having an awareness of this issue of money laundering, and then secondly, reporting any red flags of suspicious transactions or suspicious activity. And so ultimately, while the issue of money laundering itself commonly is not one in which we typically have to deal with, by folks having awareness of this issue and being aware and having that professional skepticism to look out for suspicious activity, commonly that helps us identify some other issue. So Jake, I don't know how you're going to top that particular risk area, but Chris Farley's hard to top.
Hard to top, and not to make you seem like an outsider, Swayze reference there, but we're next going to go to diminished capacity, a high risk area that continues to be prevalent within our space. If you look at our demographic that we serve, the aging population, as clients do get older, we're going to continue to see more clients suffering from things like Alzheimer's or dementia. So we have to be ready for that. We have to be armed and aware of the resources out there and be able to look at the warning signs, some of which are on the screen here, right? This forgetfulness, erratic behavior, inability to process simple concepts. Oftentimes, one of the first early warning signs is a client not able to recognize or remember or put two and two together as it relates to financial capacity, right? Some of these more complex items like, how is my portfolio performing? What's my return over a certain period of time, right? That type of thinking takes a little bit more of an advanced brain. And so typically, if you look at the research, like I said, that's actually the first, one of the first things to go. So I think our advisors are actually armed and able to recognize those signs early and actually prevent and help our clients recognize that and get them help. But how can we mitigate diminished capacity risk? One is through policy and procedures, having controls in place, doing this type of education and training. Documentation and escalation is key. using notes in Salesforce, making sure to get our compliance team involved in those conversations, or escalation to advisory team leadership. We want to make sure we are escalating appropriately when the risk warrants it. And then lastly is this trusted contact form. So both the custodians and Buckingham have their own independent versions of this form. What this form allows us to do is to, in an event of some type of mental capacity being diminished, or someone going through early onset Alzheimer's or dementia, if we have that fear in our minds and we need to reach out to someone on the client's behalf, we have that authority through this trusted contact form to reach out to them and say, hey, we're worried about what's going on with this client. We want to reach out to someone who knows them on an intimate level. Can you speak to this? So it's a great resource to have. The last topic from a risk side that I'll talk about, and then I'll wrap us up, is cybersecurity. The legal and compliance team, in conjunction with the systems team and operations, we kind of have a three-headed monster approach to cybersecurity, and we need that, right? It's probably the biggest risk across our industry and all industries right now. When we think about cybersecurity, we've got 5 tenets on the screen here, but I think it starts with people and culture, right? Making sure our associates take this seriously and that we have a culture of cybersecurity. We mentioned this culture of compliance throughout the presentation, but celebrating when we do have wins for cybersecurity, taking the phishing exercises that we send out with the utmost importance, right? Because that type of behavior lends itself to positive results, right? We're not going to have any type of infrastructure breaches if we're taking cybersecurity very seriously. Governance and compliance, our team does a lot of auditing and a lot of controls within this space as well. Training, I mentioned phishing. We will continue to send out those phishing scenarios. So please, please, please be sure to think before you click and be mindful of how you're entering your credentials and the background of an email, right? Always think and have that professional skepticism before proceeding with something. Then lastly, security controls. I use the analogy of building up our security infrastructure in our castle. Build all of this infrastructure to make our castle that is Buckingham as safe as we think, but all it takes is one click or one person falling short of that for that castle to be breached. So we spend a lot of time, effort, and energy on the security controls we have for cybersecurity, but the people risk could be one of the most mounting ones we have.